Welcome you this afternoon to our courageous conversation. This is with South Coast Interfaith Council. I'm Pastor Jonas Hayes of Grace First Presbyterian Church and a board member of the South Coast Interfaith Council. The courageous conversations over coffee or tea, if you prefer. It's growing in spirituality in the midst of COVID-19 and interfaith dialogue. We've been speaking with community leaders, clergy, first responders, and there are many others that we're going to be speaking with in the coming weeks. But we have with us today Father Mark Ciccone, and the theme is holistic care within the hospital community. As Father Mark Ciccone has been a longtime chaplain, and I'm going to share a little bit about him. But first, if Marietta, our facilitator of the technology, would review the Xoom Covenant, and then I'll introduce our speaker. Oh. We just need your sound, Marietta.
Okay, sorry about that. I had to unmute myself. So now I have to share the screen. Let's try this again. There we go. Can you see it yet?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so to help the meeting go smoothly, we may want to all remain muted except for Reverend Hayes and Father Ciccone. And then I know we'll have a time later on to ask some questions. You can unmute yourself at any time if you wish. There's a little chat box down at the bottom of your screen, and that would be a good place to type out some questions and direct them to Jonas, to Reverend Jonas Hayes. Then he can monitor and moderate everything and ask Father Ciccone the questions. If you need to, you can raise your hand. There's something called reactions, and there's an icon to raise your hand in there. If you're looking at yourself on the video to see if you turn out well and present well, you may want to have a light in front of you. And of course, we are recording today, so we're still learning this. If you have any suggestions, don't hesitate to chat to me in the chat box. And here we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marietta. Also, we do post these to the YouTube channel for South Coast Interfaith Council, so it'll take us a little bit of time to, edit that and to post that, but you can look for it there. And I'll share a little bit about our speaker. Also, to plan for your time, we plan for these meetings to take about 45 minutes in time, and we allow for about 10 minutes of questions and answers. So you can have your questions ready. So our speaker, Father Mark Ciccone, he's an Angelino, educated at St. Matthias and Loyola High Schools in LA, and then to Santa Clara University, where he received his BA in the classics. He then entered California province of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, in 1975. After 2 years of novitiate, he took his first vows, and over the next several years, he earned a degree in philosophy from Fordham University, and he taught at Jesuit High School in Sacramento and worked as an amanuensis for the American Jesuit Assistancy in Rome, and received his Master of Divinity and his THM from the Weston School of Theology in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It was during his time in Cambridge in 1983 that he became involved with a suicide hotline, the Samaritans, and with ministries serving people living with HIV and AIDS. An apostolate he continued for 15 years. He was ordained in the Roman Catholic Church in the summer of 1985 and received bi-ritual faculties to celebrate the Byzantine Catholic traditions at the same time. After 2 years of campus ministry at Santa Clara University, Mark moved to LA and began teaching at Loyola High School while deepening his ministry to the HIV/AIDS community with chaplaincy with the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And he spent 10 years working as a hospice chaplain with their various sites around the LA area. He spent a few years in ministry preparing for a new assignment as the assistant rector and minister of the Jesuit School of Theology in Berkeley in June of 2001, and he also served as the ecclesiarch of the local Russian Byzantine Catholic parish in San Francisco during that time. After 4 years followed by a sabbatical, he began his work as a chaplain at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank, California in September of 2006. And he has worked there since, recently retiring from the role of manager of the department to return to full-time chaplaincy. Mark lives in Los Feliz, where he is the superior of a community of 9 Jesuits and has family in Long Beach, San Francisco, and Virginia, and he has a lifelong interest in interfaith and ecumenical matters. So we welcome you, Father Mark Ciccone. Thank you so much for being with us. And I wanted for this first question really to be more kind of a baseline question that kind of can get to know you as a person as well as you as a chaplain. And that is, if you would just share a little bit with us about what has drawn you into ministry specifically.
All right. Well, first of all, it's really nice to be with all y'all. The thing I enjoy more than a good conversation, I suspect a remarkable variety of backgrounds you all have and all kinds of different traditions and works will make this a good conversation. So thank you for the opportunity to share some matters with you. In terms of ministry, we all have our faith story, I know, but I can say this basically as I looked at my life. That I was raised in a Roman Catholic household by folks who were not particularly pious one way or the other, but they clearly loved God and they loved us as children, my sister and I. And they also recognized that religion played an important part of their lives and they wanted to share that with their kids. So I grew up in a family that where religion was important, but it had a very natural feel about it. People didn't wear it on their sleeves. It was but there are 2 interesting things about it. The first is I'm 66 now, so I grew up in an era where young guys play priest. So I have my own altar and investments, all the rest of it. I wasn't the only person doing that. I've always been interested in the church as an historical institution, as this remarkable human institution, always completely brought my attention. The best thing to say is that I went from being somebody who was interested in the church as a social, anthropological, cultural phenomenon to recognizing the church as a place where Jesus Christ dwells, and out of which the ministry comes. A call to live his life and to live it as closely as possible, adapted to the ways of the world we live in right now. So it's a journey from a thing to a person. It's a journey from an idea to a relationship, and drawing my life into that of God has really set me up for the kind of ministry I've done for many, many years. So short-wise, that's what it is. I think we all have a version. My life has changed rapidly in some ways over the course of the years. I'm not the same Jesuit or priest or human being or Roman Catholic or Byzantine Catholic I was 10 years ago or 20 years before. But a living relationship with the Lord is exactly which brings me to want to share that with you right now and to enrich what I do.
Thank you, Father Mark. Knowing there's so many different avenues and ways to do ministry, I wonder specifically what it is about hospital chaplaincy what has drawn you to that specific calling as a hospital chaplain?
Well, I'm kind of surprised that I'm here talking to you about this in some ways. Certainly as when I took the Society of Jesus, given my interests and abilities, I was really kind of headed off towards an academic degree. Either teaching in a high school, I love teaching, period, I love teaching in high school, but also with my particular academic interest, probably getting a degree and going on teaching one of our universities. And I was pretty much set on doing that until, and you heard in the little biography there, during my second year of theology back in Cambridge, 2 things happened. I wanted to do some ministry, and the Samaritans, I don't know if they have it out here any longer, were wonderful folks who were taking care of people in most desperate existential kind of need. And then somebody came up to me, said, I talked to a friend of yours, and they said that you might be willing to help out taking care of folks living with AIDS or people who were infected with HIV. This is November of 1983. And the name GRID had just been replaced by the word AIDS. So it was pretty early on. I said yes, and did that for 15 years. What I found very quickly is that this ministry was really something I felt very simpatico with. Also a ministry I thought that my church tradition, and I as a Jesuit, and most particularly as a human being of faith, needed to be involved with. So the way it worked out, I did my theology, and society kept on saying, so when are you ready to go on to graduate school? I said, can I have a couple of years of pastoral work? And I just really get into it for a while and check it. And they go, sure, so we'll talk to you in a couple of years. 2 years comes by, can I have a few more years? Okay. Can I have a few? And suddenly they stopped asking. And I was working in an AIDS hospice, and I was very, very happy. And until they decided they didn't need chaplains any longer, because we moved from taking care of folks in hospice to the various kinds of medicinal cocktails we were giving to people. People weren't dying, they were living, and they didn't need me any longer as a hospice chaplain. That was one of the best days of my life. So there's something about hospital ministry. All of you have done ministry of people who are sick. I know that. You've all been working in hospitals as visitors, your own parishioners or members of your soul, whoever it happens to be, have gone through the difficult times that we humans who are mortal and creatures do. There's something incredibly immediate about the human condition when you go to bedside. And it brings out that humanity in the person who's sick, with all their loved ones, and with anybody who's serving them and caring for them. So the immediacy of the ministry and the power of that ministry just draws me in. And I love doing it. It's hard ministry sometimes, but I've never regretted being involved with it one way or the other, wherever it happens to be. So it's that ability to speak out of the deepest part of my faith, to know people as made in God's image and likeness, and therefore worthy of the most respectful care and the greatest love as we are given by God. That's what gets me up every day and going to the work I do, and keeps me doing it for all these years. I'd be happy doing this for the next 50 years if I have those years I did. I don't think it'll be 50 exactly, but I think I have to work to at least 80 to make the rent, so to speak.
Yeah. You know, I was really intrigued, Father Mark, when I reading your bio to hear about your work on that suicide hotline. I wonder, how did your perspective of ministry change or evolve through that ministry that you're involved? I'm just really interested to know how your faith and how your spirituality grew within that context. Some lessons learned?
I think as with any of our ministry, if we're doing it right, we are making a connection with somebody that is pathos-filled. That is, we experience in the lives of all the folks we love, the high points, the low points, the fact that we are people exalt, we also suffer. And the suicide hotline, we're talking about folks who in many cases have indeed reached the last possible stage of understanding how they can stay alive. They run out of all the support they can possibly ask for, or don't feel they can ask for it. They feel that there is nothing left for them. And what we would do is befriend them. And if it meant that you were simply on the line with somebody for an hour as they struggled not to kill themselves for that hour, then that was something that you did. And sometimes people want to talk a lot. Some people want to talk through things. But the most important thing was not trying to solve their problems and figure out a path forward. The most important thing was saying, this is a safe place with a human being who wants to be with you and wants to be with you however you are right now, however messy or desperate that is. That strikes me as a whole history from a Christian point of view of salvation. You know, isn't that what we say that God wants to do for us? That whatever brokenness we know, that can truly inflict our souls with a sense of despair, that God says, that's not the last word. I'm the last word. My word is a word of hope, of faith, of trust, of healing, mind, body, heart, and spirit. So when you're with those most in need, you also recognize from where you have to draw your own sense of strength, values, perseverance, I always say to my fellow chaplains, if you're doing chaplaincy right, you're part of the hundredfold, but you should be receiving it as well. Okay. And remarkably enough, work like that, which might seem very depressing for some folks, just deepened my faith and gave me more of a desire to be with folks in their need. It's easy to be with people when they're happy. I love that too. But being with people when they're not, and especially when it's something that seems out of their control, now that's the depth of love that God showed us in so many different ways, and still does, and that I want to be part of. So.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you so much. And you know, I'm going off script here, Father Mark. So
we talked about this.
So I'll tell you what, for Sunday, so I'm actually preaching on Psalm 77, okay? And it's kind of the psalmist is all over the place. You know, one minute the psalmist seems like they're, you know, in a good place, and then in the same breath they're feeling really, you know, depressed, I think, you know. And so, you know, I'm just curious, when I see kind of the middle of the psalm, it reminds me of times when I was a chaplain in the hospital and folks really offered some very raw lament, and what a sacred place that is to be present at a time when, like you said, there's times of great joy and there's times of great sorrow and a lot of places in between. But, you know, when I'm reading in the middle of this psalm and I hear the psalmist say, "Will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable?" You know, I'm thinking, ouch. You know, has his steadfast love ceased forever? Are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but what do you do at the bedside when somebody would throw something like that out there to say, how do you deal with that?
Well, how you deal with that is, first of all, I've never thought of the Psalms as poems that somebody wrote down just to decide to write a song. A lot of the Psalms, especially when you see the ambivalence of the person praying, the one minute saying, "You are wonderful," but the wild bulls of Bashan are running down the street after me. I think more of it as a late night's walk on a difficult day when you're trying to struggle with God you know who loves, and then a few minutes later you think, boy, this is not working at all. But you know what? I want to trust in you. So I think that this is a conversation that's going on. And I think of that moment of despair with somebody you might be working with as part of a longer conversation of grappling with with God, with issues of theodicy, name it that way, that's what it is. And saying, you know, I'm not sure what I can do for you. I have to be careful. I'm not, I'm not a savior from whatever tradition you want to talk about savior might look like. I'm someone who's saved from my point of view and have a perspective. What I will promise you is you will not go through this alone, because you notice most of the Psalms, they're not, sometimes people do speak for Israel, of course, but these are very personal. This is somebody dealing with the sometimes absurdity of human existence and not knowing how to deal with it between their faith and difficulties they know. So I said, I'm going to sit here while you work through it. You don't go through this alone. And my experience is that people, it's what I can do. So I know I can't do, I'm not a miracle worker, but I do know I can persevere with somebody. And I also know I've had my moments where I'm Jesus on the cross. And from the Christian perspective, I'm saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? But yet will I call out your name and call upon you. So it's bringing people into that kind of empathy and trying to be empathic in that way. Which means that you're not alone for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't promise you I'm going to be able to, when I stop by a bed and talk to somebody who's in really bad shape, especially when somebody's going to die and doesn't want to. I can't tell them I'm going to be able to raise you up. I'm not that kind of, I'm not that person. What I am is somebody that you will not die alone.
Mm.
You know, your loved ones will not go through this alone.
Mm.
We will be with you.
Mm-hmm.
And for working for 10 years at the Healthcare Foundation, and certainly in the hospital for these 14 years now, I've sat to an awful lot of people, and all the other chaplains do also. I'm not special in this. We're all trying to make that connection and hope the sacredness of it comes out, because we do believe that prayer means something, right? It does something. When we bless somebody, It means something. It's not just well-wishing, how nice for you, I hope things go well. You're blessing something. You're bringing God's power into that moment and say something good's going to happen. It's just that it seems to happen within the messiness of our human existence and doesn't have the miraculous feature that a lot of folks would like to see and often.
Thank you for that. That's really insightful. And I don't know, I've come back to those Psalms again and again, but that's a powerful message to reflect upon.
Well, you know, I kid people that about Psalm 153.
Uh-huh.
Oh God, you are gracious, but what have you done for me recently? You know, and we Jesuits, we had a whole series of extra songs at the end of this that we wanted to add, which reflected the human condition, because you know what? God's not working on our time frame or in our circumstance. And yet somehow God has chosen to be in the mess of us, and that's where things are going to happen. So I mean, that's really how I have to feel. So there's nothing more visceral than being with somebody who's very sick. And you can't say, I know what you're going through unless you really have, but you can say, I don't care. I'll be with you as you go through it. You tell me about that, and I'll learn.
So let me switch gears here. And I think, you know, the theme of these conversations have been growing in spirituality in the midst of COVID-19. And I think part of what makes you really unique, Father Ciccone, is how you have experienced the HIV/AIDS and some of the alarm that was happening at that time, and now this current pandemic. You know, when I talk to neighbors and some of my older members, they remember, you know, when things were just kind of starting to get where we're sheltering in place, it kind of was sending them some flashbacks of maybe like the 50s and, you know, and the war and some of the alarm in that time. So it's interesting, I think, to talk with folks that have experienced some of this range of certain societal patterns and then kind of being an agent of healing, if you will, or offering a ministry of presence in the midst of that. So that said, I wonder if you could share what does it mean to be a chaplain at this particular time of pandemic, but then also how has it been similar and different to situations that you experienced previously with HIV and AIDS patients and caring for them?
Right. I think the major difference, honestly, is the question of touch. Now, Jesus laid hands on people. In all kinds of traditions, touch is a critical element of connection with people. We can't touch people in the hospital who are COVID affected. Some hospitals are different. I know hospitals will allow their chaplains, for instance, to go into the room of COVID patients donned as would any caregiver. My hospital and our hospital system will not allow me to do that, and I would if I could. But I'm the kind of guy who, when I walk into the side from the sick, it's not an abstract experience. It's laying hands on people. It's taking oil and, you know, anointing the body with it as if it were really a medicine to hurt. You know, it is asking the people to lay hands upon the person. It's joining hands to pray around the person. So this is a thing that's lacking. And if it's lacking for me as a minister, it's lacking for families and friends and lovers, all these folks who love their folks who can only see their loved ones at best through an iPad or an iPhone, you know, some kind of a phone or a telemetry device, or perhaps talking to a room. So I just try to imagine, I think about it, it upsets me. Somebody's actively dying, their family cannot be with them. And the nurses out there working, and everything's wrong with that picture. But it's wrongness of having to deal with this disease as it is. We try to help. So for instance, we do have an iPad in the office. We can arrange to bring it to the room, hold it up to the window, and then to offer prayers, blessings. And in certain circumstances, nurses can bring it in with a covering over it so that there can be a full conversation if the person actually is capable of communicating. Often at that point, they are not. The respirator's on, or it's just it's what the disease does in the body is really horrifying. So we do our best to do it, but I can tell you that everybody feels that sense of separation from the ministry you want to do. And the nurses and doctors and the housekeepers, everybody feels that, because we're treating people as a vector instead of human being if we're not careful. And at what point should a person be treated as a human being in the fullness of that life, including its mortality, than at a point like that, right? So we do our best with this. We spend a lot of time with family and friends on the phone saying, look, I was with them 15 minutes ago, and what the description might be of what's going on. We talk with you about this for a while. So I said we abide with the patient. We also abide with the family and friends and try to keep them connected to it somehow. So the main thing is this, that we cannot be the immediacy that brings us into this kind of ministry. Because remember, all of you guys in your ministry, in some way or the other, anybody who's ever done chaplaincy or like was in the hospital, it's a situation when somebody calls fire, we run to fires. We don't run away from them. If somebody says there's a disaster over here, there's somebody in need, we don't go, oh, I kind of want to get involved with that and walk away. We walk over to it, we run over to it to be with people in their need. And there's a glass interface now between us, or a wall. So this is the hard thing about it. Like everybody else in the hospital, for instance, in California, we've been waiting for a big surge, and it's not come. But there's probably going to be a flatter but longer term intense time. And we're all trying to live with that part of it, because one thing that I always tell folks when I'm bedside with them, you'll be with a family, somebody's actively dying, or could be somebody's very sick. Back when we could have a family there, and you'd have 10 people, they're all staring constantly. And one of the pumps makes a beeping sound, or some of this, and they all look up and walk back down. And I say to them, I have to ask you something very important. I was thinking it's going to be about God or whatever. I said, have you had anything to eat today? They go, what? You go, this work of keeping vigil will wear you down, body, mind, heart, and spirit. You need to eat 3 times a day. You need to have a lot of water, or your favorite potable. You need to take a walk. You need to take a nap. When you go, take a shower, as a matter of fact, go home. When you're not here, we are. So you can really pay attention to what's going on. So that's the whole hospital is like that with everything now. We're waiting for something to happen, And there's a stress on it. But I love working with chaplains. I love working with nurses and doctors, housekeepers, you name it. These people are really remarkable. They're there and working. So why would you want to be with a whole group of people dedicated as they are to the well-being of the people? It sounds like a minister's miracle. How this works with AIDS, there's obviously some big differences, but I can tell you this. I tell folks that I've been involved with 2 plagues. And in a way that's true, but I'll say this about the AIDS compared to this. In one particular, yes, the disease can be passed on and not known about. So there are some things about the transmission, contagion, which are similar. It's affecting minority populations. And just as did AIDS with gay population, with Haitians, people who deal with various kinds of medical conditions. So also Asian populations, clearly Black and Hispanic populations would be seriously affected in ways that other populations are not. We're certainly bringing in all the technology we have, and we're realizing its limitations. The government has been, I won't get into politics, only to say the government has failed to, in fact, look after the common good, and for reasons which cannot be considered anything other than dishonorable, as well as the honest mistakes that were made, because honest God, nobody knows exactly what to do with this. We haven't had a pandemic like this since Spanish flu, really. So there's a lot of forgiveness we have to show for ourselves as people who honestly and heartfully work to the ends of this. The main thing I think I take from this is what we're going to learn from this. And this is what keeps me also, I think, healthy mentally. So I know what my background is. I know the work I'm doing right now. And look to the future, because one of the things that AIDS showed us was all the deficiencies in our society. Healthcare deficiencies, things we didn't know just because of research, but things we didn't do because we just weren't capable of it. We didn't have an understanding of how to apply it. We saw how culture and society are riven by all kinds of fissures that we were not prepared to be able to take care of. That there are people on the inside and there are people on the outside. The people who have good care, and there are many people who have no care at all. And that sense of social and societal injustice, as well as deficiency, is playing out right now in very obvious kinds of ways. So to wrap it all up, basically say this: we didn't learn everything we needed to learn from HIV and AIDS. And believe me, this is still a problem in parts of the world. It's not as if it's a done deal by any means. But we didn't learn a lot of lessons. I keep on telling people, and I keep my own notes: write your notes down, write everything down that you've learned, write all your mistakes down so we don't do this again. And human beings are terrible with this. We're very good with this. So I get how we can not do this right, so to speak. But what this has shown for not only our culture, our country, but also the world, who is privileged and who is not. Classic plagues, if anybody here, I'm sure many of you have ever seen images of Dance of Death. You know, skeleton with a scythe is not only holding the baker's hand or the washer person's hand, but also the bishop and the king and the empress. Okay, and in this particular plague, given how advanced we are in medicine, death is coming for a different group of people than sort of the way the Black Death worked, where everybody was affected by it, afflicted by it. We could do something about that. We can make sure everybody has the right kind of health care, and I could go on, but you don't talk to me now. So this is the big difference, in a sense, that we now have better medical tools, better tools for tracing and testing, all these sorts of things. Will we relearn from this? I'm absolutely convinced this is not the last time we're going to be dealing with this, and we're going to be dealing with it sooner than later. The world's set up for this kind of thing to happen again quickly.
I think that this is a good time to ask the last question that I have, and that is, how does chaplaincy and ministry look different in light of the world revealed by the pandemic? And I know this is something that's still evolving as we speak, but if you could maybe give us a lens into some of those developments as you see them now and some of what you see coming down the pike.
Yeah, I've always spoken to it in a certain sense, but I'll amplify a little bit more. And I think it's this. I believe part of the title for this little conversation is holistic, right? Mm-hmm. And certainly the role of a chaplain, but really the role of everybody who works in healthcare, is to take care of the whole person: mind, body, heart, and spirit. All right. So, because we recognize that for a person to live well, all those features and all the permutations have to work well for that person. And we try to, when somebody is physically ill, we try to do something about it, but it has the effect on how they see the world, their philosophy, their theologies, their relationships. So the holistic approach to healthcare is something that chaplains are very used to, and we want to continue that. But the holistic model is not just about the particular patient that we might be taking care of right now. It certainly involves the family and friends, involves their whole history, education, where they grew up, their culture, their spiritual background, whatever it might be. And certainly that largest picture of the common weal in which they live, the commonwealth in which they exist, is critical. So I think that chaplains, two things are going to happen. The first is that we will continue not only the work we do in hospitals, but we'll continue working outside the hospitals, as we already do with telecommunication. And I think this is something we've been working at for years. As a matter of fact, this particular situation now has really pushed chaplaincy outside the confines of the hospital into a larger approach to health outside the hospital. So I think that what we're looking at quite a bit more is that anybody who calls himself, for instance, I belong to the Providence system, if you are what they call a person of Providence, that is one who's taken advantage of our system, who has a history with us. That history doesn't end when you step out of the hospital after a successful treatment or stay. It's going to be with you beyond that. It's going to look at all the different ways we need to take care of folks. So for instance, the homeless here in Los Angeles, this is a situation that can call for astonishing grace from a different kind of chaplaincy, potentially, that is very, very health savvy, but also has all those other ghost degrees and walls for being social workers and physicians of the sort to try to take care of these folks that the society does not. So if things can go very, very badly, and they could from certain perspectives, I actually have tremendous hope that chaplaincy, for instance, might be one of the avant-garde forces to say, if we want to take care of the whole community, These are the ways you do it. And you have to take care of everybody. Just as with testing, you can't leave a hot spot over here and this well spot and expect them to stay there that way. You have to be very good about encompassing everybody in the care. So I think chaplaincy is going to move more and more out of hospitals, which will probably be primarily for really acute conditions, and out into the community and try to draw those communities as leaven into a better sense of self-understanding, responsibility, all for the individual. That's where I think it's going. So that's the positive appraisal. I think we might very possibly learn something really, really good from this. Hard lessons, but God does not allow some kind of evil for which there's not also a balance. And the balance is that we could probably do something remarkable. It's going to be really hard. People are really afraid, and of course, there's nothing like fear to make us foolish. And the whole idea, I think, is that we want to try to cast out fear in all that we do. So I do believe that the future for chaplaincy is actually very different in years to come. And a lot of older dogs like me are going to have to learn some tricks because it's going to be a different world. So, first, I would much prefer to be with all of you in a space 6 feet apart, of course, with masks on, but having this conversation mind that way. And I would look forward someday, maybe in a year and a half, where we can go to a nice restaurant and have a lovely meal and talk about these things. Boy, remember those days? And what have we learned? I mean, I keep on saying, what are we learning? What are we learning? What are we learning? But you know what? What we're doing right now is the way we're going to be doing a lot of things. We already have been. And so I don't think that, grace can be found here as equally as can be found otherwise. So.
Thank you, Father Mark. A question that's come in through the chat room to me is, what really beautiful things have you seen happening lately in this situation, perhaps with families or hospital patients, as evidenced by specific incidents that you hope will continue as we move forward?
One thing that's become very notable, and maybe one of the good things coming from this, as I mentioned, we cannot be with patients the way we want to. And what has happened is that nurses whose skill set are primarily for medical care, treatment, whatever it might be, are becoming basically, there's a Greek term, psychopomp, I know it's a fancy word, but soul leader. They are the ones who are seeing people leave the planet, leave this part of their lives. And for many of them, it's a real burden. They have no idea what they're doing. But what's going on, I think, is more and more. I will go up to somebody and I will go up there as a chaplain. We all chaplains do this. Say, I'm going to be here with you and keep vigil for half an hour. And I'm just going to let you know that you are doing ministry as surely as I'm doing ministry. You don't have to call it that. You don't have to call upon a higher power or a spiritual tradition. You are doing the most human of things. You're walking this person through the last part of his or her life. And what I find is more and more nurses and doctors and caregivers are getting that. So that means that the care we're giving is infused with what we hope is the spirit of a faith-based hospital, but even deeper than that. So there's something very beautiful about seeing a nurse who, I think 6 months ago, was, I'm just here to put PICC line in, saying, let's keep vigil. So that's a very quiet thing, I know, but I think it's really important that everybody's starting to really accept this ministry as their home. And otherwise, it's just that it's amazing how practical folks are. They know they can't see their loved ones. But when we have that pad and we're showing them, and we're showing our interaction with other patients as well, it's not just the COVID folks who can't receive guests. In many cases, other sorts of patients cannot receive guests. But we connect people and it gives them tremendous peace if we do it right. I think we're very conscious of the fact that since we cannot literally touch people, our voices have had to become ever more so an instrument of grace, of hope, of encompassment. And so I think that we're all learning to do that better and better, which can only improve our heart's attachment to what we do. So again, maybe a quiet way, but it filled me with a great deal of contentment when it happens right. And then it doesn't happen as right as I wanted to. It feels, okay, I got to figure this out. That didn't work, and why didn't that work? I'm not always responsible. I know that. I'm not going to try to be. But I do know that I can get better at this as time goes on.
Thank you, Father Mark. I have another question that's come in. and this might be the last one we have time for, is what might be one way that the local church, mosque, or synagogue can address the justice issues involved in COVID-19?
Okay, so you saved the really big one for last. Oh my God. This is when you want to have a lot of people talking. I think we're going to have a little discussion time. And that's good, because I think that that is precisely the kind of thing I'm probably most interested in. Part of the immediacy of the ministry is, where are we going with this? Because it strikes me that many religious organizations, many traditions, are seeing something here which is an opportunity for whatever we want to call grace in those traditions. An ability to attack social injustice like we never have before, that's so obviously right in front of our faces. And in fact, to be part of the Jewish tradition, tikkun olam. We want to rebuild the world. The world always needs rebuilding. And so we can see those things right now. So I think that I can tell you two things right off the bat. Whatever your tradition is, if you can get connected with your local hospitals and offer your services, I know you're all really busy. Most chaplains are very savvy about ecumenical interfaith matters, and if they don't know something, they're there. But I can tell you, it's the same way. I see Alexei, you're here. Nice to see you, Alexei. When I serve Roman Catholic patients, and I can bring them our tradition and the words and the gestures and the actions, when we have Byzantine Catholics in the hospital, and I can sing the prayers, and I can do what is good. Listening to their own language, I probably do Italian. I probably anoint people in Italian once every 2 weeks. So even things like that, bring your own tradition, your own language, your own sensibility to it, when it can be used for folks in the hospital. It's always a wonderful thing for chaplains. Believe me, we're enriched by it. The second thing is very clearly, there's no lack of need for care out there. And I would suggest that one place to really focus our attention as various kinds of congregations is with the issue of the homeless. Because the homeless are disproportionately going to be affected by this. They are already in some ways. It's going to get worse. These are the folks who are most in need, and therefore should inspire us from the God who wants to meet us most in our need, who did so and will do so through us. There's no lack of organizations in Los Angeles area, South Bay, wherever you are, to get involved in the homeless and to become chaplains for the homeless. I know here at Blessed Sacrament Parish in Hollywood, and the Jesuits in general here in Southern California and throughout the country, more and more are asking themselves, where are the signs of the times drawing us? Where is the spirit of the age drawing us? And I'm quite sure from my brother Jesuits, it's drawing us to the places where there is not equality, but there's inequality, where human beings are not shown the fundamental respect made in God's image and likeness and need to have that present. And where there's physical need, you don't talk about bread, you feed people, right? To go there where the need is. And maybe that's where we need to change a lot of our ministries and focus on that more. So I don't think there's any lack of places to search that out for homelessness. You start off there, you will have no lack of ministry.
Thank you very much, Father Mark. I'm going to wrap this up for us, and then I'm going to come back to you, Father Mark, if you could do a final blessing and dismissal for us. But first, I want to just have a couple of announcements. So, Marietta, you could show either one of those two slides, and I'll go over those as you post them on the screen. The first announcement is that next week's Courageous Conversation over Coffee, Growing in Spirituality in the Midst of COVID-19, is going to be providing provision in a pandemic, a conversation with an essential worker, Kelly Johnson, Harbor Area Farmers Market Manager. So that's going to be a great discussion, and we're really looking to try to hit cover the nuances of this very wide topic that we really are trying to hear from as wide variety of folks as we can possibly. So mark your calendar. You can send an email to the office now. The email there is office@scinterfaith.org. We are asking folks to make an RSVP just so we could keep these meetings secure. So contact Cheryl, who is the office administrator for South Coast Interfaith Council. And then if you would show the next slide, Marietta.
There, can you see this one now?
Great. This is just to say, South Coast Interfaith Council, it's a nonprofit organization. Our partnering congregations offer support, but also the organization accepts individual contributions as well. And the donation link is here, http://www.scinterfaith.org/donate/ and at that link, you're able to offer a contribution. So, consider, $10, $25. Of course, we'll accept any amount, but every little bit helps. And of course, during this period of time is kind of straining a lot of nonprofit organizations, and South Coast Interfaith Council is not exempt from that. So keep them in your thoughts, and thank you for participating today just by being present today. I have asked Father Mark if he would offer a final blessing, and as we've been doing over these last few weeks, we've been asking those of different religious traditions to share a blessing from their own faith tradition, because of course, even though this is interfaith, we're expressing many different faiths, so multi-faith, interfaith. And so would you offer a blessing from your religious tradition, Father Mark?
Well, I'll pray with you folks as I pray with the folks at the bedside, whoever they are. Just to let you know, if anybody would ever like to ask any questions of me, I think they could probably ask a question of you. You give my phone number, how to get in contact with me, so I'll be happy for that. But I'm just very conscious of the fact that whenever we are present to the suffering of the world, we're present to the God who wants to be shown as in it, to heal mind, body, heart, and spirit. So Holy One, I pray this day and always that all these good folks who are involved in this conversation, all the folks they know who have given their lives over to understanding your people and the world as you do, that you will give them particular wisdom these days, that they might indeed understand that they are your hands, your heart, your hope for so many people. And as surely as they take care of themselves, because you love them, likewise give them great wisdom that they shall recognize in every human being they meet the opportunity to reveal your holiness, your love, your very life, which has brought us into being, which has saved us, and which sanctifies us day by day. Let us be healthy and well in each of the ways that we need to be. And let us bring that great spirit to everyone we encounter for their well-being. And glory be to you who love us so, you who are Father and Son and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, and God bless you in your ministry and your work, and it was a real blessing to have you with us today. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. God bless you all, and take really good care. Stay healthy. Be healthy in every way, okay?
All right. Thanks, all.
Amen.
Great to see you. We'll see you very soon.